Hi, my name is Ken Lasseson. I wrote the Microbiome prescription website, and that site actual origins was my other blog, which is CFS remission, chronic fatigue syndrome remission, because that is how I really got into the area of the microbiome. And today we have a person with ME/CFS, 24 years, and atypical for people who ask reviews, she provides a additional test being a mouth microbiome test from a lab that specializes in the mouth. So it's going to be an interesting exploration. We have the particulars there, and basically in this case a cold, not COVID, which is a cold virus. Key thing, long COVID is a result of a cold virus. She ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome. It is not typical, but it is not incomprehensible. It's very comprehensible. She went into remission from 50 to 56. I suspect that remission is probably connected to hormone shift that a woman may be going through in that age bracket. So it was probably hormonal changes that causes things shift. As hormones changes, the microbiome changes. So somehow things shifted in the right spot, but didn't stay in, or at least a better spot, but did not stay there for a long time. Now, let's go down. Okay, to get back to it, we can go through the things like inulin. Again, it alters the microbiome, but you don't know a priori if it's going to be for the better or for the worse. In general, people do better, but it also can make things worse, and making things worse can persist, which is why I encourage people to always work from objective information from lab results. So far, everybody I have done a review for who have followed suggestions and come back with second sample or third sample or fourth samples, yes, 4 samples, has seen progressive improvement, except for when they had caught COVID, in which case they stepped backwards and then they started walking forward again. So far my observational information is that doing tests, acting on them, retesting, acting on them, retesting, acting, is a slow path to recovery, or at least so far everybody who's been doing it has reported, and you can see on my blog entries, the actual reports have been improving. Hopefully many will go the same way I did, which is into full remission. Okay, so let's go down, and the first thing which I'll do a walkthrough in a few minutes on the actual site was the percentile versus percentages. This is a for this way, as statistician, I like it because it's clean, it is not subjective, the numbers are speaking for themselves, not trying to imply a model understanding on the microbiome and thereby coming to conclusion. These are the numbers that just speak for themselves. And what we do is we break down the bacteria into 10 groups, the percentile ranking each of the 10 groups, and in theory, in a normal healthy person, we should have the numbers here all being around the same number. As you can see, that's roughly the case for most of them, but we have this whopping big spike of the low percentile, and both in species and the genus is even more severe than for the for species, more severe than for the genus. And what that means is that you have a stack of bacteria with a low amount of counts, and basically you can think of it as you have a lot of petty crimes happening, far more than what you would expect, and all the petty crimes is disrupting the economy of your system, your stomach. So this is a common pattern with long COVID and with ME/CFS. This person has it. So in other words, this person probably falls into one of the typical subsets of chronic fatigue syndrome. We go and we see a rather large list of potentially problematic ones. just there, but all the counts are relatively small. And this is just sort of saying, okay, these are things which your medical professional may be concerned about it. Some are not that concerned. Legionella at 63 percentile. It's not indicating a real problem, but it's the other things. You are 94 percentile. The count is relatively small, so it has some impact, but not so much impact that it's going to do things. Over there, we have another one up here at 81%, and that is roughly 4% of the microbiome. So that one may be an item of concern. So you have to do some interpretation between the two numbers and the comment. Comments on where the base of the comment is always on the citation. You click here and you can find the study which I got the information from, so you know where the definition that this information comes from. Some cases the studies could be wrong. I simply work on what they report. Look at Dr. Jason ones, and we see a couple things are low: bifidope, lactobacillus, etc. And all of this is again a typical pattern which is common to see with chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's not unusual; it's to be expected. And then we have so there we have the breakdown there for people interested in it. And there was none of the conditions stood up as really strong. However, when I went over to the detailed breakdown where I could see the detailed numbers, I see that long COVID got 16 matches for long COVID patterns, and for their basically site edge towards long COVID being more typical of the gut pattern than chronic fatigue syndrome. Person had something which could have been COVID not too long before the test was done, so that could explain why the shift is towards. So I have several people who have had chronic fatigue syndrome who had COVID, and in some cases, for those who had the summer before, it does shift a chronic fatigue syndrome microbiome towards the long COVID microbiome. So not unexpected. When we go down to special studies, this is where we see the long COVID match being far better than almost anything else, including ME without SPA. So basically, the person looks like they have had their chronic fatigue syndrome mutated into long COVID, which is very similar but not quite the same. And now we go down to the interesting thing, Bristol Health reports. So let's take a quick look at the report. So the report is not as clean as we would like to have seen it. And here we have, for example, diversity. We see a green area here, which would indicate good, yellow warning, red danger, and we see there, and now we see somewhere around 3 to 7 being the good objective, and then you get the magical numbers down below. So for example, here is one which is too high, etc., according to diversity. But there's a slight problem. It's not clear which ones are too high and which ones are too low throughout the whole report, unfortunately. Here is another section of the report dealing with nitrate reduction. And as you see, the green area is high. So in other words, anything down here, anything below 7.0, you really want to increase. But again, it gives the ones there, so it means, okay, wait a minute, is this on the nitrate list? Is this on the other list? You end up having, in some cases, the same bacteria on multiple lists, and it's unclear whether or not you want to increase or decrease the bacteria, because you can end up with contradictory results. Let's go on to one more section. And here we have gut inflammation, and lo and behold, the green area is the low one. So now you have the numbers down here below, which means you end up having to painfully go through and figure out for each one whether or not this should be higher or should be lower. And basically anything which is above, let's say 3, which is this one, would probably you want to reduce, and anything below that, whether or not you want to increase it or not is debatable, because 0 defines you in the no inflation one. So the question is something like this one, 1.9, which is sitting right, happen to be exactly where you are. The lab is basically saying it's an okay value, but does it hurt to lower it even more? Probably not. So again, this report gives you a lot of information. The interpretation of it is problematic because the number by themselves they give, you don't know how to interpret it. You have to go to each component, and then you have to watch out for contradictory things. Yes, it may reduce gut inflammation, but it may increase something else. For example, perhaps tooth decay, etc. So that creates a bit of a problem on how to interpret all of this. Okay, so at this point in time, let's go back to the blog. I started out by mentioning that the mouth microbiome is not an unusual thing. 9 years ago, I wrote a blog called A Mouthful, for Better or Worse. Another one, Your Mouth Can Trigger Flares. Both of those are citing literature indicating there, and basically it's saying, hey, guess what? What you put in here, what is in the mouth area, is upstream of the rest of the system. What the bacteria here will, some of them, will make their way all the way through the gut into everything, and can be a reserve. You find a particular thing, you get rid of it, you take antibiotics or something else. For example, rifamycin for SIBO, etc. You take it, it's a nice little capsule, remember? So it goes down, doesn't touch the mouth. It touches lower down. Hey, you get remission or improves, and then it comes back. Why? Guess what? Is where the bacteria repopulates, and you have SIBO reoccurring or whatever else you have. So the mouth is actually an interesting, important reserve. May not be significant for everybody, but for many people it may indicate the cause of some great frustrations in treatment. Okay, so here we describe things, and what I ended up doing with this reader's help was we actually constructed the full list of everything that was reported with a positive number on it, and then went over and give the percentile ranking from their sample from the other end, their microbiome sample. So we get a long list there, and I put a star here. For example, this particular species is not in the biome site, and by fact, biome site may not report on it at all. So what we end up doing is putting, to give some sort of reference point, is the Megasphaera genus number here at 24 percentiles, just to give some idea of the two things. So for example, here we have one, the Oribacterium, which is very low in the mouth, but it's considerably higher down below. And one of the things which is to be noticed is that the pH in the mouth, the pH all the way through your system alters. Stomach is different pH, intestine is a different pH. Some bacteria will survive or do nicely. You may have a bacteria in your mouth which is reasonably happy there, goes through stomach acid and most of it gets wiped out, but a few survive. And then it goes to the sweet grounds of your guts and your intestines and prosper. Doesn't have to be a bunch of them. Only can be one or two is enough to seed your gut coming from your mouth. Yes, it had to go through an acid bath in the stomach, literally, but it made it through. Perhaps it piggybacked on food or some other things, but it made it through. So What I did find interesting is that there are 7 species which were reported in the mouth and reported in the biome site. And I said, okay, what is the percentages? Okay, so, and what I found was we had 4 of the 7 ones which are reported in both spots happens to be a very low percentage in the biome site. In fact, statistically, assuming things are random, and we had technically we need a larger sample size, but subjectively it seems that we are showing that the biome site results are definitely influenced by the mouth results, because we would only expect one of these things to be, one of the items in the biome site to be seen in the mouth if the percentile is 14%. 1 chance in 7. But we have a whole bunch of them coming through, which implies that yes, we have the mouth feeding the lower gut area. And the question is, how do we do it? Well, I don't have a massive species list. I have all the bacteria here, which is so 700 different items which you could possibly match against. And then the question is how to select them. And I did a quick and dirty, not correct, because technically I would need to go through everything, going back and forth, saying, do I want to increase this one or decrease this one? I just did a brute force, going through and saying, if you're below 3, it's too low, it's above 7, it's too high, knowing full well, as you saw from the thing, that some things you want to be low and other things you want to be high. So this is a example done, keyword for illustration of the process, and not necessarily the correct way of doing it. The correct way of doing is to slug through the report item by item, going back and forth and finding out, is this one bacteria too low or is this high? And that probably means having to work from the website. Okay, so went through and got the result, and this is based on the mouth microbiome, which could be different than the gut microbiome, because different mixtures of bacteria, different levels of different bacteria, which influences the suggestion algorithm. And basically what we have here is the things which would probably be the best things. We do have things like Triphala, which can be done as a tea. I've used it as a tea. It's not the nicest tasting tea, but it does work. Slippery elm, which you can get easily enough as a lozenge. Lactobacillus I think is available now as a little tablet, as a mouth probiotic. Walnuts, well, have walnuts and chew and keep it in your mouth for a while, and inulin here. And then we have things to avoid, and it's interesting, almost all the avoids are antibiotics. So there, and I emphasize cutoff point because as the number goes down, the confidence goes down. Doesn't mean it's not going to be effective. It's just that we really want to have the cards in our hands all being good cards, as in king, jack, queens, kings, and aces, and things which could be helpful. If helpful, we sort of say, okay, let's not worry about those there. Okay, now next thing I went over and worked on the microbiome. Number 1 issue came up, which was inulin, which is not surprising. It was a good choice. Oh, sorry. Okay, apologies. It's still early in the morning. I haven't had enough cups of coffee yet. Ding! I'm awake. Okay. So I did the same list and indicated where they are, and what we find here is all the numbers are so-so numbers, not strong for or strong against. And by strong, I mean is if you look at the numbers, we have negative 460 to 465. These are all middle of the road. So taking these things from the mouth should not have a significant impact on the microbiome. And then over to the microbiome, we get the usual set of suggestions and items to avoid. Then I swung over to the food side, see what the key thing were. walk through and identify things. For example, pistachios, almonds, peanuts, or paprika, barley are all on the preferred list. Thiamine is easy, it's a vitamin. Hesperidin is basically lime, grapefruit, basically grapefruit. I suggest perhaps having half a grapefruit every morning as part of the breakfast routine. So you didn't ask some question. One is about biofilm. Biofilm, when I started, was generally viewed by most people as you want to really break apart the biofilm. You want to really break apart the biofilm. As I went on and grew to a better understanding of the microbiome, I started to realize, no, biofilm is not a signature mark of bad bacteria. It's a signature mark of all bacteria, or at least many bacteria, including good ones and bad ones. And there basically is a method for a particular type of bacteria to survive better. And I checked, and then Akkermansia municipale and Lactobacillus ramosus both formed biofilm. However, those are good ones. You go and you take probiotics, and both of these are available as probiotics. I take both of them on occasion, and they form biofilm. Why would you want to disrupt the biofilm for good bacteria? Why would you want to reduce those bacteria? So it becomes an interesting one. Biofilm, usually I sort of sidestep at the moment because unless you're dealing with a nasty infection that you know forms biofilms, and probably using antibiotics, probably neutral. It's hard to say which way to go. There's nothing which is strong in the literature saying you should or should not break apart biofilm. It is, well, perhaps not. If first time doesn't succeed, then try it with biofilm breakers. But I would suggest trying it first without, because you could be doing more harm than good. And the person asked about bad breath, and thereby bad breath went back in, and bad breath, it was very simple. Basically, going back and forth, we ended up based on which direction they want to remember. We had some being high, being desired, some being low desired, some being middle of the road desired. So you have to take it apart, went through and did the suggestions, and we end up with it. Tripod shows up again, oregano, Classificatum, which is available as a little tablet from when you get it from Japan, rather than as in some things like AOR for probiotics is in capsule. The Japanese solid tablet I prefer because I just pop it in my mouth and dissolve it there. And the target is the mouth. You're talking about bad breath. Hey, that's the one to do. And of course, avoid alcoholic beverages. Very, very, very few people with MECFs can tolerate alcohol in any manner. Gluten-free diet, aspartate, sweetener to be avoided. There, and then we end up with a bunch of readings about the oral and microbiome. Bottom line is very simple. Gave a few citations, and basically, bottom line is the ideal thing. Again, people with chronic fatigue syndrome generally have problem with money. You don't have enough of it, or have barely any to survive on. The ideal would be to do a pair of tests dealing with both systemic health issue, which would be either biomicide, foreign or Ombre labs, and doing something like the Bristol Health. My preferred two suggestions is Bristol Health and foreign as probably the best ones to work from. And that is about it. So let's go over and actually do it with her data. So I've logged in with her things, and we can see right here we have the lovely breakdown, and we see the overrepresentation right here, which tends to be a bit of a signature sign for COVID long there. So there, and now we go over and look at the standard set of health analysis, and we have a bunch of things, but usually you need to look at a combination of prevalence and percentile. It's prevalent in 3% of the people. Percentile is 96%. So there's a bit of distance between there. So these are not predictive. They're just indicating none of these are particularly indicated of a match. They just sort of a little bit fuzzy on the edge. And these are very crude estimates. We now have a long list of pathogens. Oh joy, joy. And then we get down here with Jason's suggestions, and you can see the things there. So that is very straightforward. Let's go back to my profile, and let's go over, and what we are going to do is go over to changing microbiome. And we now have here U.S. National Library things, and we see the percentages there, how many bacteria you have, the same bacteria with the same type of shift. I found many candidates, and down, if you go down long COVID, you see the 16 out of 164. And other things, liver cirrhosis, you have a much higher 90 percentile, which could be a concern, just something to be aware of, or to check with your MD. It doesn't mean you have it. All it means is that your microbiome is generally going in that direction. Doesn't mean it will go there. And we have everything else there. So we go over to special studies there, and there we see the 49 percentile match. In other words, compared to other people reporting long COVID, you have a good match there. You don't have anywhere near as good a match for MCFS or SIBO, or without IBS or with IBS, or even irritable bowel syndrome, etc. So these again are matches for patterns. Remember, there's a bunch of subsets. There's not a definitive pattern. These are just rough gauges to see where things will fall off. And so there, and okay, so now we're going to go back, and first I'm going to do the biome site, and then I'm going to go over and play around a little bit with one of the other sites, one of the other set of measurements. So okay, so easy way, just give me suggestions. If you take a look at changing our microbiome, you see there's one package of suggestions there. That's nice. When you do that, it will remove whatever you have and recreate using 4 sub-algorithms. So if we click here, things will spin for a little while up here, as you can see, and then we'll get a list of suggestions. So here we have the suggestion. Here's the so-called first page of suggestions, which are being very, very simplified down. Only the most common ones, usually used for long COVID or ME/CFS, are there, up or down. And these are usually suggestions which people will advocate on the web and which have some evidence behind them. But we can go over to more technical details, and we now have what I was using, which is you have everything listed and you can just go through and do it. We see some prescription drugs there, garlic, etc. Again, you can go and do filtering like herbal spices and you just get what herbal spices are good. Usually, whatever the top number is, you want to have the suggestions you take preferably being at least half of that number. And if you take everything away, you see that magic number is 465. So you want to roughly anything which is 230 or higher would be your first choice of things to do. So you have a fair number of things here in terms of herbal spices. You can go over to amino acid. We don't have anything as strong. You only have about 3 things. Melatonin supplement is there. Glutamate, which is glutamine, is very common as a supplement. It's there, but it's not strongly there. Again, if you're dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome, usually you have an issue with finances, so you want to keep the things at the top because those are probably going to give you a better bang for the buck. And flavonoids, same thing. aspirin, which is generally found in grapefruit, other things, grape propanol, resveratrol, etc. And so that's there. Now, we also have going over to the food menus, which takes you across. And there you are. Here is this lab samples you're working from. You've got 130 nutrients identified. The ones which are the highest priorities are at the top, and the ones with the lowest priority to avoid are the bottom. And you can go and just click on these to find out what foods each one has. So you could go and take a look at something like, vitamin C, and we see what foods, etc., has the most vitamin C. For example, green peppers is an excellent source of vitamin C. I'm curious. Usually oranges are advocated as a source of, oh joy, orange juice, 148. And if we get rid of that, hey, guess what? Green peppers are 10 times the concentration of vitamin C. I didn't know that. You probably didn't either. So now what you can go is go and start going back, and if you click here, take a look at my nutrient list and take a look at the cysteine, and now I can go down there and say, okay, what I'm going to do, you can change this to grams or ounces as you want, and that is a very easy one. You just go back to the root page and you click here, changes to ounces, go back and look at the nutrients, and now it's in ounces. So I'm going to go for 4 ounces of peanuts. Sorry, where am I? 4 ounces of peanuts, and I'm going to have that as a afternoon snack. And I just click plus, and up here we see that it's added to the menu. Barley, I'm going to have 6 ounces of barley for breakfast every day. And just click here and get added to it. And almonds, I'm going to have, how about 4 ounces of almonds for bedtime snack. So I've done several foods to it, and we go back, and we now go back to nutrients, and we now go over and find this one, grapefruit. I'm going to have probably 6 ounces of grapefruit every breakfast, for breakfast to go with my barley, and add that. As you see, we drop off significantly, so I'm not going to bother doing that. I'm going to rely on grapefruit doing everything I need. Back here, what's next on the list? Vitamin is vitamin B1. I could try doing it by food. We have peanuts there. I already know we are doing some peanuts, and we have it also in barley. So there, but we're also going to take it as a supplement. So I'm not going to do anything more there. We already have some of those substances in our diet plan. Aspirin, lime there, orange, lime. I'm going to have 2 ounces of lime for when I'm going to have that. I'm going to have that for lunch. And that's what's the next one on the nutrients list. Caffeine. Caffeine. Tea. I'm going to have 8 ounces of tea for breakfast. For lunch. Afternoon tea. I'm going to go for 8 ounces of coffee for supper. Okay, and let's go back And let's look at the next nutrient we want to have. Vitamin B12, again, we could do it by seeing things. Beef liver, okay. Beef liver is high in it, but if you take a look at the amount is low, and generally I would suggest you using supplements, vitamin B12 tablets instead. We have another thing you're not familiar with, and we have it in a variety of foods, and some of these could be a little bit of fun trying to do if you can figure out how to get histop and do it, and the 2 ounces of that for supper. Suggest you don't take poison hemlock, not good. Again, all of these you need to just make sure they are safe. They are in some sort of food catalog around the world, so you can just go through this whole process there, and you can go and view the current thing. Now it spells out for you what you do. You can remove something or add something and build up your thing. And now the current question is, how well are you doing? What nutrients are you getting? And voila, it now gives your nutrients. It tells over here if we have a daily recommended amount, minimum keyword, minimum, gives us that one. And it looks like you're well over that for water there. If you just click that twice, you get everything sorted nicely. And you can verify there. And for example, here you seem to be short of calcium, so you may want to do that. Phosphorus, you may want to go back and add some phosphorus through. Magnesium, you're low on magnesium. I know for chronic fatigue syndrome is generally there. So you say, okay, I want to increase my magnesium naturally. So what we have here is we have a variety of there. Japanese kelp. Let's do 2 ounces of that. And I'll have that as a lunch extra. We have rice bran. Okay, I could add some rice bran in with my morning porridge, so I'm going to do 1 ounce there. And now we can go back, view current nutrients, go back and see how well we are doing now. Hey, we got magnesium way up. We have phosphorus way up. Calcium is still a problem, so let's go over and see about calcium. Okay, we have baking powder, etc. We have fish, we have leavening agents, and so we have there, shrimp, crayfish, fish. Okay, let's have 3 ounces of that for supper. And let's go back and let's see how we are doing with our, there again. There, and now we have phosphorus taken care of. Calcium, we are good. And we can now use this to check dietary fiber. We're short of dietary fiber in terms of what the recommended is, which means going back and adding in more dietary fiber. So you could do for example, let's add some phyllum in. Let's do just 1 ounce of phyllum, and we'll do that as a bedtime snack. Go back, current food plan, there, double click again. And how are we doing for fiber now? Hey, we made it! Just adding in 1 ounce there. In other words, you can go and make sure you're getting all the stuff you're doing or needing minimum levels, at least this way. And you can see some things we're still short of. Vitamin C, we are short of. vitamin C capsules. Even though we have in grapefruit, it doesn't give us enough vitamin C. Vitamin E, probably again something which you go for supplements. Niacin, you are fine. Zinc, you're over the recommended minimum. Again, some of these things indicated that you may need to add some B vitamins to it, etc. So that's basically it. So let's go back and stop this and go back to the site. And on the side, we have upload your samples here. And if you go down, you'll find all sorts of things. But what ends up being what we're going to use is this one is all the genus. Gives us 720 items to pick from. So we're going to do that. And now we have everything by the name. Oh, I've also given the alternative names here because sometimes labs use old-fashioned names. So it won't be in the current official name, but it will be somewhere over here. And generally on this page, often I use a Control F. So let's start and pick something which we're going to do other than what was done in the post. So I'm going to look at tooth decay. She's in the green, so not a particular problem, but I want to reduce the odds of tooth decay. So what we have here is we have the bacteria. And in this case, our ideal number would be all 0. So we have variety of species there, and what we could end up doing is we want to go and reduce the genus, because the genus is what we have available for picking. So let's go over and I'll drag this aside, and I'm going to do a Control F and type in Lactobacillus there, and we deem it to be very high. Next thing was the purple, P-R-O-P-I-N, I-O-N, and purple, I-N-I-O-N-I-B, there we go, that one. We also have that one as high. And I don't think we have Candida on the list. Let's check. No, we don't. So, and that basically covers everything. So that's it. So if I want to improve my dental health, I simply go to the bottom, go suggestions, and let's get rid of that for the moment. And we'll click do analysis. We have there, probably get rid of antibiotics. And we are dealing with a genus level. We probably want to get any information about children coming in, but the next level up we probably don't. And then how many items to do? Well, we're nothing against jacking it up to a higher number. And we see to 2, and now we have the video showing, hey, you have so few, you hear things you really want to do. And now we have the list. Number 1. This is interesting. Fluorine, our word fluoride. Guess what? To improve dental health, fluoride reduces the bacteria which are associated with tooth decay. Aspirin. That's grapefruit. Excellent, excellent. Krill oil is number 1 there. Notice the numbers are not particularly big, and we're only dealing with 2 things. So we are going there. We have tea, which is on the saccharin, is there. Cranberry, tributylene, iron there. Again, what you want to do is go through the list and look for things which are able to be kept in the mouth for a while, and you want to do the top one. For example, hesperidine is ideal. Toothpaste, brush with fluoride toothpaste, and take your time before you rinse out. Hesperidine, grapefruit, savor and enjoy the grapefruit in the morning. And then over here are things that will encourage those bacteria, and Lactobacillus plantarum, probably either make sure it's in a good capsule or do a resveratrol again, make sure it's a capsule. If you take inulin, ideally in a capsule, or flush it down, just get it out of the mouth fast. And so some of those things are things to avoid. Apple, you may want to avoid apple because it encourages the bacteria. Same with pomegranate. So we have the how do we do it there. And if you go over to Food Planner, that should have brought across the list and it didn't. And I know why. Okay, I got a bug which you need to fix. But generally, in future, I will have that come across. There's some handshaking between systems which I don't have perfectly done. So it should have shown up there. It didn't. I had to track down the problem. Okay, so that's basically it. Long review, but covers just about everything. Bottom line is, if you have the money, probably the best use of your money would be something like Bristol Labs or equivalent mouth lab. I have not done a review of labs which have done mouth oral microbiome samples, and right now Foreign, because it gives the most amount of information for the buck, is my preference. And generally Ombre is number 2 and Biomesite is number 3. Again, basically based on amount of information per dollar spent. I know people with chronic fatigue syndrome have a problem with budgets, and I'm very sensitive to it, having experience with myself. Best wishes, best health,